All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of franchising. Okay, so I'm a realist. Franchising is for some, but not for everyone. Let's unpack why. So, just to share my experience with this, which is, I had 9 failed businesses prior to franchising. And the way that I think about franchising is that it allowed me to get out of my own way and to not have to worry about a lot of the major obstacles and hurdles that happen when you start your own business from scratch. And keep in mind that I, at the time, was going to business seminars. I was reading business books. I was really putting a lot of time and energy into trying to start a successful business. What would often happen for me was I'd get overwhelmed or confused or wouldn't know kind of the right sequence of things. And so it took a lot of willpower just to try to figure out what I was supposed to be doing, as opposed to just the sheer willpower it takes just to get your business up and running. So again, if you've never started a business before, I think for most people, franchising is the only realistic option for them in actually starting like a reputable business that can do multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue, or if not more. Because I think most people, the likelihood of starting a business from scratch, you've seen the numbers on the failure rates. It's insane. It's very hard. So franchising, I think, takes a lot of that out. But once you start a franchise, for me, what I tried to do on my own after I ran multiple locations of franchises, I was then able to then go start a business from scratch and build a 7-figure business. But it took having to learn how to operate businesses from franchising. So let's dive into the pros and cons. All right, so what are some of the pros to franchising? So quite obvious. You're buying into a system and a playbook. You literally get operations manual, marketing playbooks. You get the exact blueprint and system how to operate the business. So whether that's in how to find a location, the specific demographic criteria you're looking for, the specific household income criteria you're looking for, the specific metrics, et cetera, right? Build out, right? You get the playbook on the build out. You saw my picture earlier in the program, me standing in the vanilla shell, and I would not know how to build out a juice bar. I'm sure I could figure it out, but in terms of designing the store, designing the plans, and then figuring out, they connected me with a trustworthy architect, and then the architectural plans, and then bidding out to general contractors, and they had contracts with some of the vendors to get equipment at the right pricing. All of these things, right? So those were things where I would have had to all figure that out by myself, which I'm sure I could have. It just would have taken so much time. Marketing. So going into our grand opening, there was a marketing plan on, okay, here's how you market a new store, and here's the playbook. And they had done it 100 times with 100 other locations. So this wasn't the first rodeo. And there were times where I would have an idea for marketing, or, hey, I want to run this promo, and I would just schedule a call with the marketing team for the franchisor, and they would help me really put an actual plan together from what my idea was. And then they would help come up with the design. They would not help. They would come up with the design and create it for me. Sometimes I would have to pay a flat fee for it, an additional fee. Sometimes I wouldn't. But it was all stuff I didn't have to figure out. I didn't have to come up with the images and getting things printed and all those things. They handled those things, which was really helpful. Operations and training. We had the whole operational book, a binder that was hundreds of pages long. The guy from corporate, my regional operations person from corporate, he would stop by often, and he would just give little tips to some of my employees. Sometimes I wasn't there. When we moved to Florida, my operations person with the franchisor would pop by. He would say, hey, I went to your store. This looks good. This doesn't look good. It's someone else checking in on my store for me and providing the training and the tools, et cetera. So it's really helpful. Another advantage is brand awareness, assuming that you buy a franchise that has brand awareness, right? So some of these things may not be pros or advantages if you're buying into an emerging franchisor, which is why when people in our zero to profitable franchise system come and say, hey, I'm looking at this franchise that has 1 or 2 locations or territories, I ask you, hey, what's the reason you started looking at franchising? And if you're saying, hey, well, I wanted a proven system, I wanted brand awareness, all these things, well, then maybe what's better for you is looking at a more established system. Maybe not a franchise that doesn't have an established system. Not saying that an emerging franchisor is not the way to go in some instances. So brand awareness. So this helped us because there was not another, although there wasn't another store of our same brand for 45 minutes, but you could see our store from the highway, and the brand was all over Southern California. And so there were people that would say, oh, I saw you guys from the highway, and I stopped. And so that wouldn't have happened if we were just a mom and pop juice bar. People would have had no idea. There were people that would drive by, and again, they would come in, oh, I used to go to this store down in when I lived in San Diego or when I lived up in LA. It would happen all the time. And actually another benefit to the franchise system is sometimes being able to get locations that you wouldn't be able to get if you were mom and pop, because sometimes they may have multiple people in the same category. Like if they had 2 or 3 different juice bar concepts reach out and say, hey, we're interested. At that point, the landlord's going to pick what do they think is going to benefit the shopping center the most? Who do they think is going to pull in the most amount of traffic for their tenants, as well as your financial background and your business background, et cetera. So what helped us in getting approved for our location from the landlord was the fact that there were 100 other locations open. And so that was a benefit that you don't get if you're starting something from scratch. And then you get support and advice from the franchisor and other franchisees. So I would talk to other franchisees in our system, get tips on what they were doing, what was working in their business, what they were struggling with. And it was helpful just to have that community of other people to learn from, as well as from the franchisor. Whatever I was dealing with, they had been there and done that before. So again, the support and advice is really invaluable. Now, what are some of the pros to traditional business? Did we go over cons already? Okay. Pros to traditional business. Independence, right? You get to choose what you want to do and what you want. You don't have anyone telling you have to do it a certain way. You can do whatever you want. So if you have a great idea, you can do it. If you want to totally change your business and your business model tomorrow, go for it. If you want to launch a new product a week from now, go for it. You have complete creative control, right? You can do, again, whatever it is that you want in your business. You can just write a sign on take a piece of computer paper and a Sharpie and put it on your door and use that to market and bring people in. You can't do that in a franchise. So you have complete creative control. Potentially low investment. You can start making right away. It doesn't have to be a perfect fit. You can just kind of throw everything together, right? As an example, I had a landscaping business years before having a franchise, and like you can just start with one mower and a little janky truck. I used my dad's pickup truck. It wasn't branded. I just threw the mower in the bed of the pickup truck and had a weed whacker. Now, if you buy a landscaping franchise, it's not going to work that way. You got to pay your franchise fee. You're going to want to have a branded vehicle, your like systems, processes, etc. Right? And that was one of the reasons actually why that business didn't survive. I got so confused and overwhelmed of trying to manage the books and how to operate, and that it just kind of totally took me down a tailspin with that business. And the other analogy, if you start a juice bar, you can keep it super low cost. You can figure out the bare bones minimum that you need in equipment and get it up and running. But for ours, it was a $300,000 build out. or to get it open completely from scratch, including our franchise fee. And then in traditional business, you don't pay any royalties. All the upside is yours. You're not giving away 5, 6, 7, 10% of your business to anyone else. You get to keep it all, right? So what are the cons to franchises? Well, money. It can take a lot of capital to get opened. I already shared with you that our juice bar franchise was over $300,000 start to finish. At the time, our franchise fee was $25,000. These days, franchise fees are a lot higher. The average franchise fee is probably closer to $40,000, $50,000. And so ours was, again, $300,000. It can get into the millions. Now, there are some low-cost franchises. Ignore that. I will make a video on that soon. Stick to the system. With the franchise, you have to stick to the system. You can have the greatest idea on how to improve the business. If it doesn't fit the system, you need to get it approved or you can't do it. So one of the things that happened after we opened our store is I noticed that there were competitors selling juice to go in a prepackaged to-go container. And I threw a whole fit with the franchisor about how we were missing out on opportunity of selling juice cleanses because people could be buying $100 juice cleanses at one time and they were asking for it. But we couldn't just go out there and do it. And the franchisor had done some testing around it and decided that was not a business line or a product that they wanted to be involved in. And it really frustrated me at the time, really irritated me. But the question is whether the cons outweigh the pros or vice versa. And so the benefits and all the pros that I got from our system, I feel were way, way more than the cons of, okay, I want to sell to-go juices and not going to do it. In that case, the franchisor may have actually been protecting me from myself, which is what I know of my pattern in business is to jump around from ideas, right? And so that can become one of the benefits. But we're talking about cons, so let's keep rocking and rolling with it. You do need to sign a franchise agreement. It's a contract, so you may be in a 10-year franchise agreement. So you can't just throw in the towel and quit or give up when things get hard. You have to stick it through and figure out a way to make it work. Royalties. So a lot of people, what they may say is, oh, I don't want to pay royalties. Why would I pay someone else 10% of my business? Well, royalties can be between 5 and 10%. Typically, the average royalty is going to be somewhere between 6 to 8%, and then you'll pay a marketing contribution fee, which usually ranges from somewhere around 1 to 3% as well. So all in, you'll probably be somewhere close to 10 to 12%. So this adds up. If you do $500,000 a year in sales, then that means at 10% all-in royalties and marketing contribution, you're paying the franchisor $50,000 a year. And so the question is, will you get the benefit? Will you get the benefit for the royalties that you're paying? What are the cons to traditional business? Well, you have no support. There's no one to turn to. When you get confused or stuck or can't figure things out, or you're trying to get contracts and no one's ever heard of you, there's no one to turn to. It's just you. You gotta figure everything out on your own, right? So if your business is struggling, you don't have a system of people with a vested interest in your success. Independence. You can be all over the place, right? This is a pro. I mentioned independence, right? But it's also a con, which is some owners are very distracted. You're bouncing from idea to idea, constantly changing things, never getting any traction, right? And I alluded to, this was one of the challenges that I faced as an entrepreneur outside of a franchise system. And you might try to do too many different things. And it's like that gas station that sells T-shirts and makes pizza and does U-Haul and passport photos. It's like, it's all these different things that they may actually add to the operational complexity, and maybe you make more money, but you're actually less profitable. One of the cons to traditional business is actually something that was a pro, which is there's a low investment. So it may make it easier to quit when things get hard. You don't have accountability. So some of my businesses, okay, I spent a couple $1,000s on T-shirts. Great. to lose a couple $1,000s and to not do the business anymore. I mean, did I want to lose a couple $1,000s? No, but big deal. It wasn't going to really be life-changing for me. But if you have $200,000 into a franchise and you want to quit when things get hard, well, totally different, right? And what we know about business is a lot of people quit when things get hard as opposed to actually pushing through. The more skin in the game, the more accountability you have, really the more it drives you to want to succeed. That was a big factor in our success in our first franchise. We took a $300,000 line of credit on our house to get the franchise up and running. I promised my wife, I guaranteed her that we would not fail. So I tapped into a whole nother level of resourcefulness and motivation to make sure that business was successful, that there's no chance that I would have been that focused and dedicated if it was just a business that I had a couple $1,000s in. All right, so the stepping stone strategy, which is to buy a franchise. If you've never been an entrepreneur, you don't know how to run a business, you don't have a proven track record of that, well, you can buy a franchise, learn how to run a business through the franchise, learn the systems, get your first win under your belt as an entrepreneur, increase your confidence level, but also match your skill set with your confidence level, right? Because some of you type A, high D people out there, you may have confidence without the actual skill set, without the references for the confidence. And sometimes that gets people in trouble in business. You're overconfident, and then that gets you in trouble. But so buy a franchise, then go start the business you really want to start, right? At that point, you can then sell your franchise that's now profitable and successful. We'll talk more about that later on in the modules. Or you can put a manager in place to run it, and you oversee that manager. Buying a franchise now does not mean you can't start a business later or vice versa. I personally got the most benefit by learning from a proven step-by-step blueprint. All right, so the action step for you is I want you to write down what's most important to you in a business. Which option makes the most sense for where you are right now to start? Does it make sense for you to start your own independent business? Or does it make sense for you to buy a franchise? I'm asking you this because this is important. I'm sure one of the reasons why you're in this program right now is to figure out, should I buy a franchise? Should I start a business? Like, which one's right for me? Is franchising right for me? So you have a question to answer right now. If you don't buy a franchise, what do you do? Do you start a business on your own? Do you buy a business? What do you do? So you really are thinking about, hey, like, what are my other options here? If I buy a business, does it solve my problem of not knowing systems, not et cetera, right? So I want you to think about that. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses, what do you think puts you in the highest and best position to succeed right now? All right, so we're getting into the juicy and fun stuff now. In the next module, we're going to talk about how you can make money. I'll see you in a bit.